This track came straight from a recording session with the Analog 4, which is chilling right behind me. And it's still a little bit messy and sounds more like a sketch than a finished song. So in this video, we'll clean it up, shape it a little bit more, adding a few effects and really turning those stems that we've recorded into a finished mixdown that you can send out to DJs or labels. Alright, so here we are now in my DAW with the arrangement that we will mix today. And the first thing that I do is just have a listen. What is the song? What to get a feeling of what's going on, which synth or element is a main player, which are the drums or how are the drums, which elements just support the main player. And the idea is to get a feel for the levels, for the volume, and also to get a feel which of the tracks will go into groups, because I often think of certain elements. For example, most simple example here is drums. So we have a bunch of hi-hats here, we have a clap here. Let me make this a little bit longer so we can see the naming. Then we have percussions, and this is all drums. Now you could of course separate hi-hats from clap and percussion, but because we already have individual channels, we can move everything into one bus channel and have the chance to do some fine-tuning, some individual fine-tuning in their separate tracks later on. But the main idea is to create groups, buses, to get a feel of the sound, and then deciding, because you as the producer, you decide, as the artist, you decide which elements are important, which is your main player, and which ones are the supporters. I know I'm repeating myself, but mixing is a lot about making decisions and being consistent with those decisions. Let's have a listen to everything, and while the track plays, I will be adding a few groups, a few buses, just to get everything going. So one thing that we have here, of course, is the main synth. We can see it's 2 tracks, so let's have them go into one bus. Next bus would be the low end, because we're having a kick drum and a sub, both go into low end. The next bus would be drums, and that's where our hi-hats and the percussions will go into. And yes, okay, so another thing of course is to listen to the individual tracks, and in this case we're having this background pad, which of course needs to go into its own bus as well, and we just call it Atmo. And for the sake of demonstration, I think we've pretty much created our buckets, our brackets. And one goal with mixing is to give every instrument its place in the frequency spectrum. Alright, so what you can also see here, I have this mix tool in every track, and the mix tool is basically turning the volume of the track, they are all normalized to 0 decibels, down by 12 decibels. This is called gain staging, and just make sure that when every track ends up in my master channel, it's not blowing up. So we're intentionally lowering the volume, but we're also keeping the full range on this fader, so we can make fine adjustments while everything is just taken down a bit. So once you've created the buckets, I would just go a step in step by step and make sure the volumes match. And in this case, the first thing I would do is get the main synth. Get the main synth right with the Atmo. So let's bring this up. All right. You know what? Let's do a few things with this main synth, with this Atmo synth, sorry. So what you can hear is we have this low droning synth, and I actually want to filter it down. Do something like this. Keep it droning along in the background. And then have the second Atmo, which is like a higher plate Atmo, be in the background. And we can now play around with high passing, or maybe just a band pass, to roll off some of this very high end. And the reason why I do this with filters is, first of all, I use my ears more, and secondly, it's important to shape the sound and give it a place in the frequency spectrum, and I think it just sounds more musical and more, yeah, just sonically better with filters. And I tend to use EQs really mainly to clean up things, to just give it its final shape, the final touches. Now this sounds a little bit boring, doesn't it? Why shouldn't we add, so let's add a delay a little bit wider. Ping pong delay, and let's bring in you know what, we could actually modulate this frequency with an LFO, so maybe a bit long. See, the idea with Dub Techno is that while it is kinda static, the sound itself is static, but what you want to do is you still want to create movement which is, or at least feels, random. Right, so we could do the same this, but maybe have it do some dotted, or let's maybe well, and you know, a lot of the times mixing and shaping the sound is about experimenting and finding the spots that sound great. So it already sounds, it sounds great. It sounds great. So right now we've added effects to the individual tracks, but I think it's time to add something that both will share, and I'm really a big fan of notch filters. This gives any sound immediately, an instant. Deep feeling. How is that? And to bring back some of the original sound, we can use this mix knob. And we haven't used a reverb yet, so I think let's try a reverb. Just to give everything a little bit more room. Just playing around here. Alright, let's have a listen with the main synth. With the main synth. Alright, so I think this Atmo track sounds great. Let's work on the main synth. And as we're still in sound design phase, it's totally fine to work on things in solo. But still, this slipped into the wrong channel. Alright, so I'm just cleaning up the low end a little bit here. And alright, one thing, because I'm actually pretty happy with the main synth already. And one thing is, so I'm actually very happy with the main synth overall already. And if it sounds great already, you don't need to add in more things. And by add, I mean enhance it, make it better. If it doesn't, if you plan to add in things that don't give you a better sound, just don't do it, really. While you're recording, that the sound is shaped and formed in the best way possible before you go into mixing, because you can't really add in things that aren't there. If your sound is thin, you can't really beef it up. So make sure that it's always better to record a little bit more sound, so to say, and then take away from it, because you can't really add in things. So make sure that what you record, that you commit to it, that you put in the work, that it sounds great from the get-go, and that really you only have to do a little bit of shaping. And you know what? Instead of the filter, we'll be using the Pro Q3 here with a little bit of a high pass. So just to make sure it's not in the way of the kick drum, because if you can see here, this area, low end area, is definitely going to be in the way with the kick drum. And it's filling out this midsection here really nice. Actually sounds pretty good already. Alright, one thing I want to show you real quick is how I would approach the low end. So we're having this kick drum and the sub. And the thing with kick drums is they tend to have, in this 120 Hertz area, they tend to have a lot of things going on, which makes the sounds muddy, a lot of frequencies, and you can already hear when we pull this frequency down, it sounds cleaner. So this is one way you could go about that with an EQ. But another way I found, and I actually like to use a lot, is to make a copy of this track. And instead of EQs, we'll be using filters, and we'll literally creating just the super low frequencies, and then we'll create the transient. And now we can literally place the tip of the kick where we want it to be in the frequency spectrum. You could also use a band pass filter or a high pass filter if you want to retain some of the high end. Creating a really nice place for the sub to go into. Alright, so sounds good enough. And let's put everything together in one track and compress it, and then with the input make sure that you get just a little bit of gain reduction, just kissing the needle, and then with the output knob making sure that the output is peaking at our minus 12 dBs. Again, gain staging. And of course, with a lot more tracks to work with, things get a little bit more intricate. Use, of course, also do a filter with just the sub. And use a bandpass to really just pinpoint the frequency to keep it really clean. Okay, sounds great. Let's go over to the drums, and here's a lot of stuff that's happening. So we have this hi-hat, we have this hi-hat, We have this noisy thing. And because they all stem from the same sound source, being the analog 4, and from its same noise tone that it has, naturally those frequencies will pretty much clash and overlap and play in the same frequency spectrum. And I can show you what I mean. So they're all somewhere in this area, and we can also see that there's some low end. So what I tend to do is, first of all, is add some high passing on every of these, and I just activate those plugins. They are in my Mixin template. They're in my general template. They're already there. So all I have to do is activate them. And now so what we will do next is to give these three elements a place in the frequency spectrum, because this has a lot of content which is shared with this. So let's first bring the levels to a good point. Of course, always in context. I think the hi-hat is fine at this place. So the next thing I will do is I will turn this into a bandpass. Because the bandpass has the nice effect that it will kill off everything that is below this area, and it will kill off everything that is above this area. And this gives our hi-hat a distinct place in the frequency spectrum, because we also have this, remember, we also have this noise floor thing which is in there all the time. And we can shape this off a little bit more. And get rid of some of the super high end here. I think sounds great though, the way it does. And then we have this hi-hat. So let's see what we have here, and as you can see there's also a lot of stuff going on here. So let's shape this down too. I think we can use a bandpass here as well. Of course, there's a clap. Let's bring this in. And what I like to do with claps is I like to filter them down as well. So let's use a filter. Already sounds like something. This percussive thing here, which sounds a little bit like a shaker. And let's turn this down here as well. so we can preserve this peak. Alright, let's add in a compressor to glue everything together. So one of the reasons we use buses is to glue everything together, because all of a sudden all tracks, all elements, all these tracks that go into the drum bus now share the same sound. It's like putting or shining the same color light on all the elements, so they now all shine in the same color, and that is an effect. So this alone gives everything a glue effect, which makes it sound more like a cohesive sound, a cohesive piece of music. So we can turn this clap down even more. Bring down the main synth just a little bit. So I'm just making a little bit of space for the clap, because the main synth is full enough and has enough going on. Okay, sounds great. So what we also could do is just add a little bit of reverb. A little bit of reverb. Okay, just a little bit. So the volume of the main synth is still a bit all over the place. So let's add a comp and just a little bit of compression to tame the up and downs and dynamics it has. So the clap still has, yeah, a lot of going on down here. Let's basically high pass it. Yeah, this is way better. Although it's quite hard to tell with just headphones on. This Atmo track also has a lot of low end going on, so let's tame this a little bit more. And it's okay to use very shallow EQ shapes. They don't always have to be this straight surgical lines, which almost never sound great. So just a gentle roll off, just want to round it off a little bit. This is to the very beginning. sounds great to me. I'm not sure what you say, but to me, this sounds like an almost finished mixdown. Of course, I'm doing it now on headphones, and I would definitely double check on main speakers in your car, in ears. Another thing that you can do, and I highly recommend it, is to turn down the main volume, the volume when it's playing. Just make it really silent. And if you can hear everything at low volumes in the balances that you want, you've done a good job. Sometimes when you turn things down, certain elements, they just pop out. They are way too loud, and that's an indicator therefore that they are actually too loud in your mix. That sounds okay for a quick mixing session. Probably no one is going to watch this till the end, but if you do, kudos to you. So there you have it. So thanks for watching. Once you're done with mixing your song, it's time to master it, which we do in this video.